Hello, family. It is Wednesday and it's Refueling Your Faith. And today we're going to be walking through the books of First Kings and Second Kings. 2 Samuel, we know David is the king of all of the house of Israel. And in First Kings, he dies. And so his son Solomon becomes king and basically builds the temple, which in 2 Samuel, we find that God did not want David to build the temple. He wanted his son to build the temple. And so Solomon follows through with that. He builds the temple. We find that Solomon was the most wise king of Israel because he asked for wisdom. God visited him and he said to him, "Hey, I'll give you whatever you want from me." And so Solomon simply asked, "I need wisdom. I need understanding so that I can judge your people rightly." And God blessed and honored Solomon's request by giving him wisdom, but also giving him prosperity and giving him he prospered all of his life. But Solomon, as all the other kings of Israel, as we read throughout the First Kings and Second Kings, did evil in the sight of God because he began to marry foreign women who were not Israelites, women who did not claim God as their father. And so because of that, his heart was swayed. He began to worship other gods. And therefore, he was killed. And so his son Rehoboam became king. Under Rehoboam, he acted foolishly, which is actually our highlighted verse, but we'll get to that. But he acted foolishly. And because of that, the kingdom of Israel was divided again. So we had the people of Judah, and we have the people of Israel. Judah is mainly the tribe of Judah, as well as, I believe, Benjamin. And then the tribe of, or at least the people of Israel, were the remaining tribes. And so for the entire book of First Kings and the entire book of Second Kings, all of the tribes of Israel did not work together. There was the kingdom of Judah and there was the kingdom of Israel because of Rehoboam's foolishness. This is what happens. And so the entire book of First Kings, the entire book of Second Kings was a succession of kings who did evil in the sight of God, with a couple of exceptions where we saw kings that did good, who did righteously before God, but most of them did evil in the sight of God, and therefore they received punishment. God allowed countries and other nations to overtake them and oppress them, just like the king, just like when we were in the book of Judges, and the judges would judge the people, and God would have to continuously send judges to get them on the right path. And then they desired a king, as we learned in Samuel. And now they have kings, and they're doing the same thing. The kings were doing evil in the sight of God, and therefore the people were doing evil in the sight of God. And most of those, they were serving other gods. The first commandment, do not put other gods before me, they were doing it. They were not honoring God. They were going to other gods for guidance, going to other gods to make sacrifices, and God was just not pleased. And so the entire book, as I said before, I can't go through all of them, but read it for yourself, the foolishness that the kings did before God. The kings of Judah, there were constant changes in that, and the kings of Israel, there were constant changes with that. So the kings were not righteous, but God did send prophets to help the people of God to remember that their God is God alone, and therefore they ought to be worshiping him alone and not other gods. And so that's how we meet Elijah. And Elijah, many of you know, was a very famous prophet. He was the prophet that met the King Ahab, at Mount Carmel. And he said, "Hey, you tell your gods to come here and light up this altar." And he gave them time. They prayed to that God, even to the nighttime, but yet that God never showed up. None of their gods showed up. Elijah then prayed to God, and God sent a fire to consume the altar. And so, of course, it was recognize that the God who brought them from Egypt is the same God that is with them, but they are choosing to reject him. Unfortunately, even though at that time they said, yes, God is our God, of course, they turned away and continued to disobey God and continue to worship other gods. When we get to, and that was all in First Kings. In Second Kings, we find out that Elisha, not Elijah, Elijah is in First Kings. Elisha is going to be the prophet that helps the people of Israel in the book of Second Kings. And Elijah, that's where we get a lot of the stories of the lady who did not have any food. Her kids were about to be sold off, and she was like, I need help, or they're going to be sold off into slavery because of debt. And so Elisha then told her to go get vessels, and as many vessels as she got, oil filled those vessels, and she was able to care for her household. And so there are many other stories about how God showed Elisha to be the proper successor for Elijah through the various miracles that he was able to perform throughout the land. And so we also find in the book of Second Kings, this is where Israel is overtaken. God becomes so angry, and he should be angry. When we looked at the judges, when we look at now the kings and they're constantly being evil, God gets tired of that, and he allows the Babylon to overtake Israel first and then overtake Judah. And so at the end of Second Kings, we find that the Israelites, both in the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel, are now exiled, or they had to move to Babylon, and only a remnant, only a little bit were left in the land of, well, in Judah anyway, were left in the land of Judah. And the temple was burned, the walls were broken around the city of Jerusalem, and so yes, it was totally destroyed because of their disobedience. And that's what they said in the Bible, that this happened because they were disobedient to God. God allowed these things to happen. And so, as I said earlier, there is a highlighted scripture that I want to bring to your attention. And it is 1 Kings chapter 12. I'll be reading verses 13 and 14. And it said, the king answered the people harshly, for he forsook the advice of the elders which they had given him. And he spoke to them according to the advice of the young men, saying, my father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions. And so this passage I bring to you because it reminds us that we need to listen to elders. We need to take the advice of those who have walked the same path that we are walking and have experienced fruitfulness and success, and really take what they say into great consideration. That's not to say that God would have you to do something different, but generally someone who's actually walked the path that you've walked, you need to listen to them. In this particular passage, Solomon's son Rehoboam did not listen to the elders. The people had come to him to say, we want you to give us an yoke that is easier than what your father gave. And he went to the elders, the people who had served with his father Solomon, and asked them what he ought to do. And they said, well, you should need to listen to him. But he did not listen to them. He went to people who he grew up with, who had not been serving. And he listened to their advice, and that they said, you should operate harshly. And so because of that, the whole kingdom of Israel was divided again. And so I just want to bring that to our attention as you are walking this journey. I pray that you are putting people in your life that can speak to you and that you will listen to. I know that I have not achieved all that I have achieved simply because of my own wisdom, but I have put people in my life and listened to people who have walked the path that I've walked. That's the important thing. Rehoboam listened to his friends who grew up with him. They had not been king before. They had not ruled before, and he listened to them. Wrong. We need to listen to people who are walking the same walk that we've walked and have experienced fruitfulness. They give us wisdom. And some of us are having difficult situations in our lives, and we are complaining to our friends, and we're complaining to people who really don't have the wisdom. It's something to just vent. That's important. But to get wisdom and advice about how to navigate this life in a way that honors God, we need to get connected with people who have that experience. And many of us don't have that in our cadre of people to get advice from or to run ideas by. And so I am challenging you today, if you do not have that group, that you would be sensitive and that you would be open to people, that you would invite somebody out to Starbucks who is living the life that you want to live. And those of you who have walked this life, and it may be some people who are older in age, be open to people wanting to sit down with you because you have wisdom to share. And it is just wisdom. They're not your children. You don't tell them what to do. All of us are older, but you can give advice and help people think through the things that they're going to do in this life. And so I hope this passage encourages you to really put people in your corner, in your inner circle, who are walking the walk that you need to walk, your path, and have actually overcome, because they're out there, and get advice from them. I know my life has been enriched by allowing people who have walked my walk and been successful to pour into me and listen to them and gather that wisdom. That makes me wise by putting into practice the knowledge that I have, and then I'm able to help others who come behind me. This is Refueling Your Faith. We hope to see you next week. We'll talk about 1st and 2nd Chronicles, which is really another version of 1st and 2nd Kings, but we get to know a little bit more about the kings. But I hope to see you next week, and you have a blessed day. God bless.